What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several mistakes that could be costing you in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 2. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below which mistake you think has been costing you most this season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolvedJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So, the rivalry system obviously plays a huge role in Season 2, but I think a lot of players are letting them throw this off too much. I've seen people comment things about how, like, at the start of the match, they feel like they have no time to even really play the game or loot or do anything because people get rivalries on them right away. And while that definitely can happen, if somebody gets a rivalry on you right away and they're an imminent threat, they were probably at the same landing spot as you anyways. Throughout the course of the game, you may have people push you because of the rivalries. You may get the rivalries and then feel inclined to push people. But at the end of the day, I think focusing on these bounties or these rivalries way too much can be a mistake that costs a lot of players because it locks you into, like, if you're focusing on it way too much or worrying about it too much, you're worried about a 1v1 essentially in a giant free-for-all where there's many other players on the map that are going to fight you or, you know, interact with you. So if you're way too worried about the bounty and way too tunnel vision on that you don't really pay attention to your surroundings in other ways, you're potentially just going to get eliminated by somebody else, or maybe you do fight your bounty and then immediately get third-partied. So obviously you do want to eliminate these rivals to get the currency, but also get that target off your back. But at the same time, you need to pay attention to the rest of the game as well. When you have a rivalry on somebody, there will be a circle that's marked on the map, and expecting them to be perfectly in this circle or perfectly in the center of this circle could be a huge mistake when you're pushing your rivals, because the location of the circle basically updates on a ping. Like, I don't know what the timer is, but let's just say hypothetically every 30 seconds the location of the player updates. That means the person can move around in that time and not be perfectly in the circle or not be perfectly in the center of the circle. And so while it can give you a general idea of where somebody is, don't expect them to always be in the circle or always perfectly in the center. I've even had bounties on bot players, and then the bot was even able to travel outside of the circle. So it's not like they need to be moving extremely fast to get out of that radius. It doesn't update super often. So take it as a general idea of where they are, not precisely exactly where they are. This kind of goes hand in hand with the tunnel vision type thing. Pushing your bounty or always feeling like you need to push the bounty and be the aggressor in that situation, I think can also be a mistake, because this, I think typically the defending player is going to have an easier time. So if you're always so set on pushing the bounty, a lot of times that's going to result in somebody, you know, setting up for you and creating a fight that's on their terms and on terms that's good for them. So there's a lot of times throughout the course of the game where I definitely will push the bounty, but depending on where they are, what the terrain is like, you may want to just not push them yet, or, you know, do other things. If somebody's camping on a big mountain in an incredibly defendable position, I might just go about my day and leave them be. If they're camping in one of those underground areas, I might just go about my day and leave them be. Again, focusing on this too much and treating it like it's the only person in the match at that given time is a huge mistake, and a lot of these other kind of mistakes that follow that are somewhat similar. Also, when it comes to the currency you get for doing rivalries, if you're doing them often throughout the course of the game or just while you're playing, you can spend this currency and not really have to worry about it too much. So I typically like leaving mine basically max or very close to max, because I want to have the currency to buy stuff if there's ever like an update where they change the items that are in here. But if you're just a regular player and you're doing bounties somewhat often, I feel like you can spend this without really worrying about it or without thinking about it very much. So you're able to buy these really good exotic weapons. You're able to upgrade your weapons. You're able to buy some of the perks. Don't feel like you need to be at 600 all the time or it's the end of the world. Spend the currency. You're probably going to get more throughout the course of the game. Even if you aren't someone that rushes bounties as much as possible, you probably do several throughout the course of the match. So it's not the biggest deal to use this currency. Another huge aspect of this season is going to be the Chaos Reloader shotgun. The shotgun is incredibly good. It's incredibly powerful. The first mistake a lot of players make when it comes to this weapon is being too concerned about headshots. And now headshots are good, but the base damage of this shotgun is so high that you don't need to hit headshots to get decent damage. And in a lot of cases, going for that headshot and missing some of your pellets might result in you even doing less damage. So if the situation is good and you can get a nice clean headshot while hitting most of your pellets, awesome, you could do that. But if it's like a sketchy fight or, you know, decent range away from the enemy, just hitting a nice body shot on somebody is going to be solid damage most of the time. I think this is a shotgun that you just want to prioritize how many pellets you hit rather than just getting the headshot. Another mistake I've seen people make or seen people talk about is that they seemingly wait for it to reload to shoot it again. And what I mean by this is they shoot the Chaos Reloader shotgun and then they're just sat there with that equipped waiting to shoot it again. But in most times, what you want to do is shoot this and then swap to some sort of spray weapon and then swap back to it once it's reloaded. It does only have one shell, but since it reloads on its own, you can fill the time between shots with damage from your spray weapon, just like how you would any regular pump shotgun. And so the one shell aspect of this weapon doesn't even really matter. You could just play it like it's a pump shotgun all the time and you'll be fine. Unfortunately, it does seem like there's a bug where sometimes it'll supposed to reload and it's not going to. It seems like this could be caused from swapping too fast, and that's what causes it to not reload properly. So it's ideal for you to wait like a fraction of a second into the reload animation before you swap to your spray weapon. If you see some of that white line on your reload next to the crosshair start to develop, then you'll know that you're good to swap and it's just going to be fine. Again, in these heat of the moment situations, a lot of times you want to swap as fast as possible to have, the most damage output. And I get that, and it can be stressful. Another potential fix for this, which I know sounds like it makes no sense, but allegedly dropping the Chaos Reloader shotgun for 10 seconds and then picking it back up again can fix the bug for that one specific shotgun you have. So if you find a better version later on, you may need to drop it for 10 seconds and then pick it back up again. And I know that sounds stupid. Sounds like it makes no sense at all. But since doing that, I've been getting the reload bug pretty much never. And, it's hard to prove a negative or hard to prove that was the solution there. Like, you can't go back in time and then see if it was going to happen throughout the course of the game. It's possible I've just gotten better at using it and better at the timing. But also, since doing this, I haven't had that problem. This season is also incredibly fast-paced with lots of mobility items, so it's very important that you know how and when to chase enemy players or pressure your damage on an enemy in a fight. If you get damage on somebody and then they just leave with mobility and you don't chase them or don't know how to chase them, you're going to have a lot of kills get away from you. And the flip side of this, if you don't know how to reset fights when you take damage, you're going to have a rough time because it's an aspect of the game that is going to come up a lot this season. Any season that's really fast-paced or has a lot of mobility items, this little mini game in terms of how fights play out is a big deal. And I've made videos about this in the past in terms of how to reset fights and how to chase enemy players. You can just type in Evolve Jake chasing, Evolve Jake reset. It'll probably come up. And so they need more time to talk about than what's available in this video, unless I wanted the video to be like 40 minutes long. But just keep in mind the fundamentals of how you reset a fight. You want to use your mobility to get to some sort of cover, potentially heal. Luckily, the pizza is in the loot pool this season, and it's an incredibly fast healing item, and that's why it's what I prefer to carry. But also, you want to get to some sort of cover or some sort of position, and then look to get damage on the enemy and turn that fight, not just completely escape the fight. Because if all you're doing is running, a lot of times you don't defend yourself, and the enemy will be able to, eventually eliminate you, or you end up running into a bad situation with your sprint and mobility exhausted. When it does come to mobility items this season, though, there are plenty of mistakes that you could be making. The first and most obvious, and this goes without saying, but I had a game recently where the final player did this, is going to be ziplining at enemies or near enemies. If you know an enemy is in the area and could potentially have line of sight on you, the zipline is not a good item to use. This is more of just a traversal, like, I think the coast is clear, I'm going to go for this, but there's always that risk associated, Either way, trying to use it when the enemy does have line of sight on you can result in them getting a lot of damage on you very quick because the time to kill is very fast this season. And then that could just create a situation where, it's GG's. I don't like carrying the zipline. I don't think it's particularly good, especially in solos. Maybe in squads, having somebody carry it for those niche situations could be good. But most of the time, I think using the zipline is a mistake, but especially using it when you know enemies are nearby and could potentially have line of sight on you is just not something you want to be doing. I've seen a lot of players kind of hate on or ignore the new overdrive grenades because they were kind of underwhelming at the start of the season, but they have been buffed and they send you much further now, and it feels like a much better, more like fluid mobility item. So these overdrive grenades are solid. At this point, the only negative I think between them and shockwaves is that shockwaves, you break structures, and with the overdrive grenades, you don't break structures. But you go really far with them. And with the unlimited stamina and floatiness to your movement after using them, you can go just as far as shockwaves. When it comes to these new 7 power gloves, I've seen confusion on how to use this as a mobility item because a lot of items we've had like this, they send you in the direction you're looking. But these 7 power gloves actually send you in the direction that you're traveling. So if you're holding forward on your analog stick or you're holding your W key, you will go forward when you use these. It doesn't matter really where you're looking. The same is true of backwards. If you're holding backwards on your analog stick or S on your keyboard, you could be looking forward and you'll still dash backwards. And then same with side to side. You need to be moving in the direction you want to go with this item, not only just looking at it. And that is something that makes it weird for a lot of players to use or just different. Another thing to keep in mind with those new overdrive grenades is while the initial use of the overdrive grenade does negate fall damage, that effect I talked about earlier where you get boosted movement speed and you get a bit of a better jump, you can still take fall damage while you have that effect active. So let's say hypothetically you overdrive grenade, you land, and then you try to like bunny hop off that landing. If you do that off like a mountain or over a large gap, you are susceptible to taking fall damage. So the initial use of the overdrive negates fall, but once your feet have touched the ground after using it, fall damage is fair game again. So be careful bunny hopping after using it. That is a nice way to move around the map and travel and push people, but you got to be careful doing it on any sort of height. I am not a fan at all of melee weapons being in Fortnite, but I think ignoring the melee aspect of these 7 power gloves is going to be a mistake this season because of how good it is. The uppercut ability, especially in close range fights, can give you a huge advantage. Not only do you get damage, but you kind of fling the enemy up and make the fight awkward for them. And oftentimes the player that hits this first is going to be the one with the upper hand. So if you're just like playing and refusing to use melee, how I typically would, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage because you're letting the enemy probably uppercut you most of the time. So in a lot of those close range fights, you're going to want to go for the ground pound on the gloves or the uppercut first. And it seems like hitting the regular attack into an uppercut kind of negates the animation of the uppercut and allows you to swap weapons faster or not get stuck in that animation faster. And so that's going to be a combo that dominates close range fights this season, especially if you're pushing somebody. And where this is incredibly helpful is going to be in bushes. A lot of fights in or around bushes can be really awkward for both players. So using the uppercut in these situations can make what would have been kind of a weird kind of coin flip fight super easy. Whether you were in the bush already and somebody is pushing into you and then you uppercut them and then shoot them, or you have an enemy in the bush that you then kind of maybe ground pound and then uppercut. Both sides of this interaction, using the gloves makes that fight a lot more easier to win, I think, especially if you're a console player because the bushes are harder to see through, and especially if you're a controller player because aim assist gets kind of wonky in the bushes. So again, I don't like melee in the game, but this melee is very good, and a lot of times if you aren't using it, it's going to get used on you, and the fight is going to be hard to play. The Dark Voyager has a new rift anomaly where there's drones that are around a portal that you need to destroy the drones, and then once you do so, you get a really powerful weapon from Fortnite's past, and there's some really good choices here. But like the bounties, if you're focused on this too much, you make yourself an easy target because a lot of other players are going to be going for this. You kind of want to bait it or try to shoot the drones from a protected angle and periodically scan the area and look for other enemy players. This is obviously easier to do in team game modes because you can have somebody doing it and then somebody else defending and kind of scouting. But either way, don't get too tunnel vision on these drones. And you only have one storm zone to clear the drones. After that zone, the anomaly is over. But if you've cleared the drones and the weapon is ready to pick up, it doesn't matter how much time has passed. That will stay there even after. So don't feel too rushed to grab the weapon. Again, you want to do so when it's a time that works good for you, because going for that weapon grab or rushing it makes you very vulnerable and very easy for enemies to get shots on. As I said, this is something that a lot of people are going to be looking to get shots on. The slap pizza is a very good healing item. It heals very quick and it gives you unlimited stamina for a period of time after using it. But you don't actually need to eat the slice to get that unlimited stamina. So eating the pizza just for the slap effect is actually a mistake because you can start to eat the slice and then swap weapons before it's finished and get the slap effect without consuming the slice. So I think it's like a half second to use it. You just interrupt that at all, which is not hard to swap weapons, before half a second happens. Then you will get slap without eating the pizza. So you basically have unlimited stamina if you have a slice of pizza in your inventory and you can keep doing this. So eating it strictly for the unlimited stamina is really good. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is going to be not paying attention during the bus route. So With Chapter 7 Season 2, every match, a player becomes the bus driver, and if you have a set spot you want to land, you kind of want to monitor how the other player is driving, because they potentially might be making it harder for you to land where you would want to land, and there might be a time where it's more ideal for you to jump before they veer way off course than what would have otherwise been ideal. A lot of times in Fortnite, you could just kind of look at the bus path and then know, okay, I'm an early drop, I'm a mid drop, I'm a late drop, and you kind of play, you know, you don't have to pay attention to it or think about it that much. But with enemy players driving the bus, it is something that you kind of need to pay attention to and evaluate constantly, because what would have been the ideal time for you to jump might actually end up being the worst if they veer completely away from your POI. Then you might need to think of somewhere else to drop if something like that does happen. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.